Mass shootings happen, and they're truly awful. But the fact is, over 30,000 people are killed by guns every year. And almost 60% of those are suicides. The sidewalk wasn't very long between the classroom buildings and where the office and the cafeteria were. But there were just masses of people standing there with their eyes wide open, watching for teachers to bring their own child up to the cafeteria. Little 8-year-old girl lying there, her little dress and her little red shoes. She wore red shoes, I remember that. And I remember looking at her and thinking, and I said to Pat, I think it's Oren, but it's like, I didn't want to say that that's who it was. You know, here was a little girl who, you know, an hour before had been playing in my classroom, had been outside playing jump rope, which she liked to play. And I knew it was Oren, but I couldn't say it. I said, I think that's her. Cold, my hands were cold. I'm even cold talking about this right now. And I didn't touch her, and to this day I regret it, because if it had been my child, I would have wanted, even though she was gone, it was obvious that, you know, she was gone, but that I didn't, you know, reach down and hold her hands or something. We had a lot of counselors there, and there was a lot of counseling available to the teachers, and if we thought kids were having problems, we let them draw a lot, holes in the wall. Those bullets, those military-style assault weapons, our kindergarten colleagues who were part of Cleveland School members remember the bullet going through 2 walls and through another wall and into a bookcase. I mean, so there was that powdery stuff all over the place. There were dings in the tetherball poles for a long time, but the custodians worked all night long to get it cleaned up as much as possible. And you know, there still is debate about whether or not we should have been there, but I can't imagine being anyplace else, you know, the day after that. I just remember that we got through the year, we didn't have to do testing. All of the children who could came back. One of my student who was wounded and spent time in the hospital, she came back after about 2 months and was in a wheelchair for most of the rest of the year, but everybody was interested in what had happened to her and, you know, wanted to help her out. But she came back to school. All the kids who could came back. But my student who was wounded by shrapnel, the next year her parents moved to Southern California because it was so hard for them. And this was Melinda Leong, and when her older sister graduated from UOP a few years ago, Melinda could not come back. She couldn't even come back for her sister's graduation from college. We had a 25th anniversary acknowledgement of the shooting, and we had a big ceremony at Apsara. We had a lot of people there. Melinda did come back. What she wanted to do was she wanted to see the school, so the principal of Cleveland School now let us come by. Judy Weldon, Mrs. Weldon, who is one of our colleagues, has some of her students from that year. Several have called her just to touch base with her and to let her know that they're really struggling. They still are struggling. When they hear about other shooting incidents, it brings them all back to them. It's a struggle for a lot of people. It's veterans, but because of the accessibility of guns and the permanence of solving your problem with a gun that's so horrific. And so that's another thing we do, is we try to let the public know to be aware of those things and that there are ways. I should have brought the gun violence restraining order, but a law was passed in California a couple of years ago.
I can pass that out.
Oh, do you have the gun violence restraining order? And it means that if you live in a house where there is a gun, and let's say you have an older brother who is having issues because maybe his girlfriend broke up with him, or he's just suffering from one reason or another, got bad grades or wasn't accepted at the college he wanted to. And if you think that that person is going to be a harm to himself or to anybody else, you can contact the police and they'll arrange for a judge to issue a warrant to have that gun removed from the household. And that's a relatively new law, which is really important because it doesn't take, your heart can break, but your heart heals. It's just that you don't realize it sometimes.